and prepare ourselves for the world outside. Data is a new deal. It's been an amazing 12 weeks.
The exposure is massive.
There's so much money on this, you understand.
The class was insightful,
Interactive, eye-opening. Class was very fun,
Engaging and impactful.
Join the Center for Business Analysis and prepare yourself for the world outside. Data is a new deal. It's been an amazing 12 weeks.
The exposure is massive.
There's so much money on this, you understand.
the class was insightful,
Interactive, eye-opening. Class was very fun,
Engaging and impactful.
Join the Center for Business Analysis and prepare yourself for the world outside. Data is a new deal. It's been an amazing 12 weeks.
The exposure is massive.
There's so much money on this, you understand.
the class was insightful,
Interactive, eye-opening. Class was very fun,
Engaging and impactful.
Join the Center for Business Analysis and prepare yourself for the world outside. Data is a new deal.
Okay, Jude, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. Okay, all right. Thank you. Please let me know if my screen is showing. Okay, all right. Hello, Jude. Yeah, please, it is showing as you can see clearly over there. Okay, all right. So, just a minute. Jude, sorry, I had sorry. Yes, please. So please let's go on. I hope you can hear me clearly. Okay, all right, thank you. So I was saying that I also believe that data is the raw material of our time, and indeed it is the oil of our time. Mostly when we talk about data, we are talking about numbers, and then behind these numbers, there's a story, and then behind this story, there's the need to make some decisions. I know we produce a lot of reports, dashboards, KPIs, and then analysis, but sometimes we do not reach the decisions we are supposed to make. Not that the data itself is wrong, but sometimes the stories that we are supposed to tell are missing. So today we'll just be taking us through, on a practical level. So we'll be looking at data storytelling, the art of using numbers to influence every decision. So as Jude rightly said, I'm Nathaniel and I work with CBG. So we're mainly looking at four things. We have storytelling and reporting. Most of us are used to reporting. Somebody will say that we already have reporting, so why storytelling? We look at the differences. And then with the numbers or beyond the numbers, how can we make meaning out of the numbers? And then I look at storytelling from a different perspective. So I have a model that I'll share with us. And then we look at some of the mistakes that we make when it comes to storytelling. Now, with reporting looks at what has happened. And then when it comes to storytelling looks at why did it happen and what are we supposed to do. So basically, the purpose of reports or reporting is to inform, and then it looks at data and fact. It answers the question of what happened, and then it's being presented in dashboard tables, KPIs. Usually, report is structured. When you look at a monthly report, they are really structured. They do not really change unless you have a complete review of the report. And then you need experience to interpret the data. Usually, they don't inform much when it comes to decision making. So when we look at storytelling and the reporting, we will say that informing or leading to decision making, we say is a bit low to moderate. Now, when we look at storytelling, the whole purpose is to influence and comes with insight and meaning. It answers the question, why did it happen? So what? And then what next? It's usually in the narrative form, but it is to influence. And then in making decisions, high. So someone will say that at what point will I use report and at what point will I use story? So with report, usually we look at monitoring KPIs and just to inform, providing transparency, and then maybe supporting audit and then governance. But when it comes to storytelling, it has more to do with convincing a school or management on decisions to take, and then explaining risk trends, and then escalating issues, and then influencing issues. So let's take an example with reporting. So we can say that fraud increased from 120 to 145, and then ATM losses 200,000 to 320. That is we are reporting. So no insight, no agency, or no action. But when it comes to story, we can put it in this way. Fraud incident increased by 21%, driven mainly by mobile and ATM channels. And then control gaps in digital monitoring are emerging. If not addressed, losses will escalate and impact customer confidence. So we can see that we have an action which is that we need to strengthen real-time monitoring and then review controls and then ensure customer awareness of the existing fraud. And then the result is very, saying fraud increased by 120 to 145. We put everything into a story where we look at why did it happen and then what we should do. So for data, we will say that data informs and then story inspires. But when we put the information that we get from data and the inspiration from story, we can make good decisions from these things. So beyond the numbers, they are going to create meaning. So let's look at this as a colleague or Kofi presenting a report full of numbers. Kofi is communicating or a colleague is communicating. So I've talked about dashboards and KPIs that sometimes we present and have little to influence decisions that we make. The reason is that data without context creates confusion, and data without meaning creates indifference. Data without action creates no impact. So that is why we have to make sure that we get the insight from every data that we have. So from the traditional perspective of the mainstream, we know that data storytelling combines data, visuals, and a narrative to explain what is happening, why it matters, and what action should be taken. So you can see the spider web, the analysis, like the analysis story that we tell. Now, we put into a story that when we tell stories, they are difficult for us to forget. We may not easily forget. That's why we say stories. So when we're young, sometimes we are told a story where you push the sky up, and then today we can see that the sky is up. We cannot forget. So when we are able to put the insights from data into stories, it's easier for management and also easier for us to understand. So all that we're saying about storytelling is that ability to insight that influence. So what matters, and then why we need to take decisions, and then what we should do. Now we are going to take a practical example. So this is an email that a supervisor sent to a colleague and says that, "Dear Akosia, analyze the information attached on fraud losses so I can present to management by close of day tomorrow. Kindly share the completed analysis by midday tomorrow. Should you require any clarification, please feel free to contact me." So now, this is what your supervisor has given you. You have fraud losses from digital transactions. Month from January to April, that is, you have complete data on first quarter. And then you have the fraud losses in USD. Now, this is what your supervisor has given you. So when the supervisor sends this to Akosia, let's see what Akosia submitted. So this is what Akosia submitted. Akosia said, "Yes, sir. Please find attached the analysis on the fraud losses." So now Akosia went further and added month-on-month change, and then added the percentage change, and then gave us a direction as to whether the fraud losses are going up or going down. And then use January as a benchmark and give the percentage change from January. So when we look and see that from January to February, 5,000 USD, which is 25% up. And then from February to March, 8% up. March to April, 25,000, that's 55.56% up. And then give us the change in relation to January, 25%, 125%, 250%. Now, this is what most of us will present if we are given this data. Yes, you can see that everything is going up, but this is not enough. So what will happen if I did this and submit to management? Just one line graph with text boxes and images, and then show this. When you look at this clearly, you can see that we started January from 20,000 and currently we are at 70,000. On the face, you can see it's 70,000. And you can also see that the total loss amount is 160,000. And then the highest is 80% increase in March. Overall, it's 250%. And then you can also see that there's the need to identify vulnerabilities, enhance monitoring, strengthen controls, and then mitigate impact. So yes, storytelling looks at presenting your story with dashboards that you can write something from. So I would say that when you present your report like this, still it is not enough. Whatever you see on the face, put it in words. So instead of giving this to management, your boss to present to, instead of giving this to your boss to present to management, when you put it in this form, this is just one line graph, as I said, not anything difficult. One line graph, and then you have total text boxes, you add a few colors to it, you are good to go. Now with this, let's go to this. Then you put everything words. So you can say that digital fraud losses increased significantly from 20,000 in January to 70,000 USD in April, representing a 250 surge within 4 months. And it's very true. So we are telling the story. The next step, the most notable escalation occurred in March, where losses rose by 80% month on month and stood 125% higher compared to January levels. Overall, fraud losses in Q2 have tripled, and that's true. This trend shows no effective control intervention, indicating emerging vulnerabilities in digital transaction channels and a rapidly escalating risk profile. If sustained, this trajectory will directly erode revenue through increasing losses, while also driving customer attrition and reduce transaction volumes. So now you see that the story that you are telling, you've told us what happened, how it happened, and then what management needs to do. If they don't do, the risk that stares at us. So in all, we say that there is therefore the need to analyze key weak points to identify vulnerabilities and control gaps, strengthen real-time monitoring, enhance customer awareness programs, and then reinforce overall security measures. So this is our story. This is the data that our boss gave us. But then we'll be able to tell a very good story, a compelling one, that there is the need for management to take decisions. So when we are given data and they want to tell a story, sometimes the data does not inform you about some of the items, like the controls, the channels that were used. So you would have to go back to the source and ask few questions. So data analysis is important. And ideally, I know that we need to have that skill. And I don't think that is everyone who has that. It's not everyone here who is good at Excel, SQL, Power BI, Tableau, Python, or even R. But since we work with data, we all want to make meaning out of the data. So I looked at data storytelling from a different angle. I wanted to see how, if I'm not good at the tools, how can I make meaning out of the data that I have? So that is the basis of the model that I want to share with you. Now, all that I want to tell you is that it is good that we make stories from graphs and charts. To me, there is invisible relationship or relationships within data. And all that we are supposed to do is to find the relationships in the data that we have. And in doing that, we will use a three-level approach to go about it. So you have data, as I said. So let's look at something from the academic perspective. So Brian Dice described data storytelling as a combination of data, narrative, and visuals. And then Annie Kirk says that we should treat data storytelling as a product of well-structured visual output. Alberto holds that the effectiveness of a storytelling depends on how well visual helps us. So you see that it's all about the visuals and the visuals. But data storytelling is not the beginning of data analysis. It's almost at the middle. So if you don't have the tools, you won't be able to tell a story. For me, I think we should look at it from a different perspective. I believe that storytelling does not begin actually with charts and presentations. Rather, it has to do with understanding the relationships and the interdependencies hidden within the data. Because you're able to understand that if A is increasing, B will go down or B will increase, it will be easier for you to tell a story. So to me, it has to do with uncovering, interpreting, and communicating relationships within data to explain what is happening or has happened, why it is happening, and then what should be done about it. So I will not dwell so much on this one. This one looks at the rise of e-commerce. I will not dwell so much on this. We'll get to a different point. So like, let's say that this e-commerce, one activity or one data, and we are supposed to tell two stories. Now, it says that 2.14 billion people are already shopping online. So if they are shopping online and driving 4.9 billion in global sales, what is the story that we are supposed to give it to a company that is into physical retail activities? That is, they build shops in different parts of the world. What story can we give it to them? And then two, what story can we give it to a bank from this data? So now let's go to the management of a retail shop. We can say that more people are shopping digitally, and most of these purchases now happen on mobile phones. As a result, the larger share of retail spending is shifting away from physical stores to online platforms. This shift is not temporary. It is growing and will continue to grow significantly over the next few years. So what it means for a retail shop is that if you do not strengthen our online presence, we will lose market share. Growth is no longer driven mainly by opening more stores. It is driven by how well we serve customers digitally, especially on mobile. So for a retail, we need to invest in mobile and then make buying simple, fast, and then frictionless, and then use data to understand and target customers digitally. And then we need to balance the store network with strong e-commerce capabilities. So for the retail, all that we are saying is that growth is moving online. If you don't meet customers digitally, growth will leave us behind. So from the same data, we are going to give the management of a bank a story. And then this is what we will say. As retail shifts online, payments are also shifting online. Customers are making more transactions digitally, especially through mobile devices. This means that the volume and speed of transactions passing through banks are increasing rapidly. What it means is that so more transactions mean more fee income, but also higher exposure to fraud, system failure, and operational incidents. So risks now grow at the same speed as digital transactions. So all in all, we will say that digital growth is increasing transactions and revenue. Scale at the same speed, rates will erode again. So now when we look at the e-commerce, saying that 72% of e-commerce happening through mobile, which reduces friction and increase purchase frequency. Now to the retail, they need to go more online. To the bank, they need to focus on how they can manage the risk that comes with e-commerce. So if we have data and we want to make meaning from it, it is not just about looking at it with our eyes that we will make meaning out of it. We should be able to tell management how we came about the stories that we are making. I was saying that it's all about relationships. So for me, it's relationship discovery. That is where the story begins. So at this stage, the goal or the objective is to uncover the hidden connections within the data. So we have data. We'll do a practical example. We have data. And the data that we are saying that there is relationship in it. How do we come with the relationship to tell a story? So with correlation, we ask ourselves, do variables move together? If transaction volumes are increasing, do fraud cases increase? So that would be the relationship. And the regression says that does S influence Y? Do they move together and by how much? What is the degree by which they move? Then we also look at the trend. Now, in looking at the first point, which has to do with the relationship discovery, that is finding the relationship that exists between it. So at this point, we isolate data and numbers, which now become connected. So for example, let's say that data transactions are increasing. Fraud incidents are also increasing. So at this point, the focus is to identify the relationships. Now let's come to the second level. After we identify the relationship, what do? We have to assign meaning, or we have to interpret the relationship that we see. So here, we are saying that fraud increases as digital transaction increase. What does it mean? That is, rapid digital adoption is likely outpacing the maturity of fraud control systems. So let me explain. Now, when we did regression or the correlation, we realized that when transaction volume increase, fraud also increase. That means that the controls are weak. That's what it means. So after we have identified the relationship, then we've interpreted the relationship. What has to do with explaining the meaning of the relationship. Now we look at the third level, which is the narrative and then decision impact. But then with the second level, where we try to interpret meaning, we also look at how each of the data contribute. That is their contribution or the percentage contribution. We try to look at that one. So at this point, the third level, which is we look at the cause, effect, the impact, risk, and then the action. That is the narrative. So for example, we will say that digital transactions are increasing significantly. What is the effect? So we are telling the story. From my point, this is how we should tell it. What is the effect? Fraud incidents are rising alongside transaction growth. What is the impact? Majority of fraud originates from digital channels. What is the risk? Existing onboarding and authentication controls may not be sufficient. What should we do? We need to strengthen digital controls, enhance fraud monitoring, and improve authentication processes. So if you are able to get this, this will be a very good story that we have to tell. So instead of putting everything together like this, and then we are writing just one story, this will be the story. The increase in digital transactions, which is the cause, is driving a rise in fraud incidents, being the effect. Highlighting control gaps in onboarding and authentication, that's the risk. So digital channels account for most of both transaction volume and fraud cases, being the impact, indicating that risk is highly concentrated in this space, and therefore immediate prioritized strengthening of digital channel controls is therefore required. That's the action. So if we take the cause, the effect, the risk, the impact, and the action, we have a very good story to tell. So now let's look at this. Senior managers or management typically don't care about the charts that we present. All that they care about is what drives losses, what influence performance, what predicts race, and then what causes customers dissatisfaction. So when we are presenting our story, we should look at what management expect, the key factors, the rates, the effect. That's where we have to pay attention. But then as we are looking at relationships, relationships are meaningful. Context and business understanding are very important. So there's already a story within the relationship that all that we are supposed to do is to tell it. So there's a story in the data. It has to do with the relationship. Ours is to find out. So let's say this is the data that we looked at from the beginning. So we want to tell a story from this data. And when you look at this, we can see that there is no explanation, no relationships, and no story. How do you tell a story from this? So we have enhanced this data. We have added transaction volume, field transactions, fraud loss, and then control. So now we are going to tell part of the story from volume and then field transactions. So we are going to use transaction volume and then field transactions to plot a graph and then give a meaning to it. So let's say that you have, I have selected transaction volume and then field transactions. So if you have Excel, we can copy this and then send it to Excel and then plot a graph. But I will be doing it in PowerPoint. I will not do it in Excel. So let's go to, it's the same thing. If you are in Excel, you have selected it, you go to insert, and then you pick the graph that you want. So for me, I'll do it in PowerPoint. So I'll go to insert, and I'll go to my charts, and I'll use the X and Y. I'll just pick any one that I want. I go to OK. So now I have X values and Y values. Let me close this one, and then let me give color to this so that we can all see it. Good. So I've copied my data, going to paste it, and then I'm good to go. So now when we plot the X and Y graphs, sorry. So when we plot our X and Y values, so I'll be doing two of these, then we look at other things and we would. So when you plot the X and Y, which is transaction volume against field transactions, what is the relationship? When transaction volumes increase, what happened to field transactions? We have 12,000 to 120, 8,000 to 90. But what is the actual relationship? Now, when we plot our graph, what is the X and Y? Now we can click on any of the points, right? Click it, then you add trend line to it. Now, when you add a trend line, that is, you go to display equation and then display arrow. Good. So we are looking at the relationship within the data, but your eyes, you can say that yes. Let me increase it so that good. That's what we have. So we have transaction volume of 12,000, field transactions of 120, 8,000, field transactions of 90, transaction volume of 5,000, field transactions of 60. What does it mean? What story can we make out of this? Now you have y is equal to 0.017x minus 28.264. Forget about the minus 28.264. When you plot this, what it means is that the number in front of x is positive. Let's focus on that one. Since it is positive, what it means is that y, which is the field transactions, at any point will increase by 0.017. So x, which is the transaction volume, if we have 1 transactions added, field transactions will go up by 0.017. So if you multiply 0.017 by 1,000, what it means is that if you have transaction volumes increase by 1,000, then field transactions will go up by 17. So this is one story that we can write and say that failed transactions are highly influenced by transaction volumes. So as transaction volume increases, failed transactions also increases. R squared is equal to 0.9089. What it means is that this is very strong coefficient of determination, very strong, 90.89, almost 91%. So what it means is that that's you saying that y is equal to 0.017x, where you are saying that when transaction volume goes up, field transaction will go up. The relationship is very strong. So this will become part, this will become part of your working paper that you put down, and when you write your story from it, and you are asked, what is your proof? What is your evidence? You present this, and then you say that this is your evidence. So we'll take another one, and then we'll go to. So let's look at the second one, which is volume and fraud loss. So we have transaction volume and then the fraud loss amount. You can copy the same thing into Excel. So transaction volume. So we have transaction volume and then fraud loss amount. When the transaction volume is 12,000, fraud loss is 8,000. When it's 8,000, 7,000, 5,000, 5,000. What's the connection? Does fraud loss increase with transaction volume, or it goes down when transaction volume goes up? What is the evidence? What can we present to convince? Not just by looking at it. So let's look at the relationship as we did for the other one. So you can plot the graph in Excel, but I just want to change the first one. So I've duplicated the slide. I just want to change the figures so that I'm good to go. Now, so 8,000. Please, I'm coming. Let me take it from this place and see. We are plotting our charts, X and Y. Good, okay. Let me just edit the figures here. Close. Then we'll go and add a trend line to it. So we click on any of the points, right click, add trend line. We go to the format trend line. We just display the equation, display R squared. Then let me just increase the font size. Okay. And let me play it. So now we are looking at transaction volume. Sorry. So now we are looking at transaction volume and then fraud loss. When we have transaction volume of 12,000, our fraud loss is 8,000. So we have y is equal to 1.201 for x minus. Let's forget the minus 1 for which is the intercept, and let's focus on y is equal to. Now the figure that comes after the equal to sign is a positive. So what it means is that when x, which is transaction volume, increased by 1, fraud loss amount will increase by 1.2 USD. And then you have R squared equal to 0.8455, or you can say 0.85, about 85%, which is very strong. So now we had the first part where we saw that increase in transaction volume increases fraud. Let's go to increases in transaction volumes increases failed transaction, which is a relationship that we have established. Now the second one is saying that increase in transaction volume also increases the fraud amount. It's just because increase in the volume increases the frequency. Definitely it will increase the volume. So now with the story, we have one part where increase in transaction volume will increase the failed transactions, and then increase in transaction will also increase the fraud loss amount. And then this is the evidence that we have to show. Now, there is the final part that I want us to look at. After we've been able to use correlation or regression to find the relationship that exists, the last thing that we have to do is let's look at the percentage contribution of each of the channels. So when you look at the percentage of transaction volume, internet banking contributes 20%, mobile app contributes 51%, and the USSD contribute 30%. Now you can see that mobile app contributes more than half. So that can also be a story to write. Now let's go to the second one. Percentage contribution of failed transactions. Internet banking contribute 20%, mobile app 48%, USSD 32%. You can also say that failed transactions, mobile app contribute 48%. That's another part of the story. So you see, when you begin to look at relationship, you have a lot of stories to write. Now, when it comes to percentage of fraud loss, you can see that mobile app contribute 46%. So after using the correlation and regression to get the strength of the contributions, and then you use this one to get the actual percentage contribution. Now, this one is telling you where to focus. We can from the surface, we can see that we need to focus on mobile app. You need to do some assessment in mobile app and see the controls that are not helping or that are weak. So let's say that all that we have done, if you want to write a story, instead of saying that fraud increased from 20,000 to 70,000, this is the story that we can have. The increase in fraud losses is primarily driven by the rapid growth in mobile transactions, which exhibit a strong positive correlation with failed transactions. We have established that. And we have the evidence. So concurrently, so we didn't look at the third one, which is the control effectiveness because of time, but we look at 2. So this indicates that fraud is not merely increasing, but is being structurally enabled by rising transaction volumes and weakening controls, particularly within high-risk digital channels, which is the mobile app. So there is therefore an urgent need to strengthen real-time transactions. So all that we have done, we realize that when transaction increase, we will have failed transactions as well. And then when transaction increase or volume increase, we will also have high fraud being reported. And then we have the evidence to show that. And then when we did the percentage contribution of all the channels, we realized that we have to focus on mobile app. So we put our story in this way, and then we are good to go. So yes, data will answer what happened, but storytelling will look at why it matters and what should happen next. So when we did a regression, correlation, and a percentage contribution, we realized that we need to focus more on the mobile app aspect. Now, let's look at some of the mistakes that we make, then we will end. When we are telling a story, all that we are supposed to do is just tell a story. We are not here to impress. We shouldn't try to impress management. Now, some of the mistakes is we present so many charts, like what we have here, and we think that everything must go to management. If everything is important, then nothing is important. So let's look at that. Now we report without insight. So an example is revenue increased by 15%. Then we look at where we can say that revenue increased by 15%, which is mainly driven by advertisement. Maybe management increase advertisement budget in Q1. So we can link it to that and say that that is the reason for which revenue has increased. So let's make sure that we offer recommendations and then avoid using jargons and big English just to convince and confuse people. Let's present everything in simple ways. I would say people do not make decisions because of data. From where I sit, it's not true. They make decisions because they understand the story behind the data. So the goal of data storytelling is not to impress people with numbers. Actually, it's to help people make decisions faster. The data does not speak for itself. It's the relationship in the data that helps us to make meaning out of the data. So I think for that, we would like to end here. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. So Jude. Hello, Jude. Yes, please. I think if there are some questions in the chat or if anyone this is supposed to be okay. Okay. Yes, please, I'm here. Jude, your line is breaking, but if I heard you very well, you were asking how to find insights in the data that has been collected. Okay, so let's look at the data that I presented, which didn't have any insight in it. So one thing that during the what I was doing, one thing that you can look at is the items that you have. One, how is the data structured? Is it month on month? If it is month on month, then one of the focus should be all the data that you have. Present something on month basis. Then you can look at, do you have something like a channel, or do you have something like a city? Do you have something like a country? Then you will have to present your data on that. You can look at averages, you can look at total, you can look at cumulative, you can look at month on month cumulative. So when you have data like with period, which is month on month or a quarter, and then you have sales, you can look at the sales volume month on month. Then you can look at it on a quarterly basis. If it's a big data which has years, you can also look at that. So it may depend on the available data and then maybe how to look at it. But you can look at it if it's a period, if it's a channel, if it is a location. You can look at it with averages, frequency, with counts, with sum. So I think if I've answered you, I don't know if maybe I've answered you well. Please, can you hear me? Okay. Yes, please. Okay, so you see that when I was looking at when I was talking about some of the mistakes, where I was saying that we should avoid using regression jargon, statistical overload, and you should have it in mind that whatever we are doing, there is somebody in the crowd or in the audience who understands better or understands us as we do. So let's present it simple. I want to look at the last story that I presented. There is no jargon inside. So I was saying that the increase in fraud losses is driven by, then I look at that. So let's just put everything that we see in simple English. What is happening? What is the risk? Let's talk about that. Let us not just use more jargon. So all that I would say is that let's keep everything simple. Let's write our English just simple. Let's look at what is happening, why it is happening, and what we should do in simple context. Hello, Jude. Hello, Jude. Stop sharing.
Yes, my mic was muted by admin. I think it's working now. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for uh, taking time to join this session. I have enjoyed myself. Very interesting session. By way of information, I want to share with you our location, Center for Business Analysis. We are at East Legon 17 Garden Road near the ANC Mall. All right. So if you would want to have this kind of knowledge, I saw a message about someone asking how he or she can get this knowledge and where to start from. The answer is not far away. It's the Center for Business Analysis, right? In this era where things are changing fast, all right, almost every organization is becoming data driven. So if you want to be counted among the topmost professionals that are needed the most, then data analytics, business analysis, this future ready skills should be at your fingertips. And the right place to start is at the Center for Business Analysis. We will take you from beginner to intermediate. By the time you are done with our session, you are ready for the job market. All right. And also there are some internship opportunities. If you want, you can also pursue those. All right. And these are international internship opportunities when you pursue our program. All right. So if you want more information, call us on 0246 809 200, or you can visit us anytime Monday to Saturday. Monday to Friday, we are open 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and on Saturdays 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. All right. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach us. Thank you so much.
Hello, Jude. I wanted to say something earlier. I don't know if okay, right. Thank you so much. And I remember when I registered to do the certified business analysis with Center for Business Analysis, I thought that maybe there are a few things that maybe I will need from the company. because I thought that I'm good with data. But let me be honest. When I got there and I saw how they are organized, Steven, Haruna, and the whole team, and the session and the knowledge they gave me, I'm very, very grateful. And I would like to tell everyone here that please go to Center for Business Analysis. September, there's a program on Chatter. We are going to Chatter. So let's join. Let's do the program. They are very good. They'll help you. They will give you soft skills. No theory over there, please. There's no theory over there. Everything they give you is soft skills. So, you, thank you so much.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, great. So you showed that, I think you showed one of the slide, you had a lot of graphs and charts, and you said if everything was important, then there's nothing is important. But I think usually that also becomes the case because a couple of people want to see the difference chart. So basically they are all, or maybe there are a couple of them that are important. In that case, is it necessary to probably group them or categorize them and have different pieces of charts in that case? Sorry, I mean like different dashboards with, grouped or themed into one. Yeah.
Okay. There's reporting and there's storytelling. So with all the reports, you can do what you are saying, but then like a summary of where management should focus. That is where we look at the trend and then the focus. Like the one that I showed, mobile app. Management needs to look at all the channels, but with resource constraints, we need to look at mobile app, conduct an assessment there and look at how we can enhance it. So yes, we can do that. But when it comes to storytelling, it's to what decision should we take immediately? So let's focus on that area. So yes, we can have that. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Amoah.
Good afternoon, Daniel.
Yeah.
Hope you are doing well.
So I'm doing well by God's grace. Hope you are doing well too.
Yes, please.
All right. So I want to find out the difference between making a report with data and then telling a story with data. And then also if there is a bit of storytelling in making a report with data. Thank you.
Okay, so with reports, we are looking at what has happened. Fraud has increased 20%. Yes, fraud has increased. So you give a narration of everything. So the month-on-month report that we present, the whole data is presented. Then we look at what has really happened and then we give you recommendations. But with storytelling, we are looking at within the data, where should we focus our resources? What is really happening and why did it happen? When you look at reports with recommendations, yes, then you are looking at storytelling. So you can have storytelling in the report. So yes, that's true. But most of the time, it's not every report that contains a story. So I presented the difference between a report and then a story, where I said that with the report, the focus is more on the data and then the facts. What has really happened, where we present in KPIs and then tables. Meanwhile, for the storytelling, we are looking at insight and then meaning. Why did it happen? So what should we do? What next? So these are the differences, but you can have story in report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. A follow-up question. So, in terms of management decision making, which one do you think should be our main focus as a data analyst? Is it the storytelling or the reporting, or a combination of two? In terms of even if the storytelling should be more than the reporting, or the reporting should be more, or you can do them equally in terms of decision making for management.
Okay. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So management needs the report and they need the story. So the report looks at the entire data, everything from January to December, what has happened, everything. We are informing management. The story is the recommendations, if you want me to put it that way, and why we need to pay attention to the recommendation. So we need both. We have to present both to management, but then our recommendation should be very strong. I hope you are getting it.
Okay. Yeah, I get it.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
So, like for instance, the findings and recommendations should be your story.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity. My question is that in Mr. Nathaniel's presentation, he said storytelling does not begin from the dashboard. So I want to know specifically as a data analyst, when you are presenting to your management for decision making, where and how should we start our storytelling? Thank you.
Thank you very much. When I said storytelling doesn't begin with the charts, all that I wanted to understand is that it's not a chart that we just start the stories from. Even the charts is coming from a relationship. So if we are able to understand the relationship, you will see that when I was looking at transaction volume and then field transactions, we had a chart. That is a scattered chart. We had a chart. But let's say that you plotted, let's say that I wanted to use a bar chart to plot whatever you have. You are not going to get the relationship. So when you look at the two items and you want to get the relationship, that's why I said the correlation and regression. It's about the relationship in the data. Then you can present that in a chart or in a narration. So let's understand that there's a relationship in the data. Let's see if you can get some of the relationship, like what we did. And from that, we can have some charts to represent the relationship, and even the percentage contribution. We can also put them in the chart. So I don't want us to just look at yes, what chart are you going to present? Is it just because you have bar chart, you present it? If you're able to understand the relationship in the data, you have a very strong story to tell. Thank you.
Okay, thank you too. My follow-up questions deals with the correlation you were showing us and the explanation you gave. All the correlation graph that you show us was in a positive correlation. So I was thinking, in terms after plotting your graph and it is in the negative correlation, then in that essence, is it advisable for a data analyst to present such negative correlation relationship to the stakeholders, or there is something that you can do about it to present a very good information to your stakeholders? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, when you look at the X and Y, the correlation, and you have negative, what it means is that, so when we look at the fraud with transaction volumes, what it means is that if you had plotted the third graph, we realize that when transactions fail, control reduces. That is where you're going to have the negative. So at each point that transaction volumes increases, or at each point that failed transactions increase, their control score will reduce. So at that point, it's negative. So you can say that the increase in transaction volume increases failed transaction and reduces control, which means that I'm saying something negative. So the negative correlation is just telling you that there's a negative relationship at the increase of transaction volumes. So failed transactions will reduce the control score. Thank you.
Okay, please. So in that essence, as we saw it in your presentation, between the fraud case, in that essence, is it advisable for me to tell the stakeholders that there is a negative correlation between the online shopping and the fraud cases, which if there is a negative correlation, then it means there is no need for them to take any decision about the whole situation.
No, please. Let me explain it. Now, when it is negative, okay, let's say that transaction increase, failed transaction also increase. So when this goes up, this will also go up. Now, with a control score, it's supposed to be positive. So we are saying that if transaction is 100,000, control score should be 100%. So our ability to control fraud should be 100%. But we realize that when transaction volume increases, our ability to control fraud goes down. That's a negative. So as transaction volumes go up, failed transactions will go up. Our ability to control the fraud goes down. So then our control, or the controls we have in existence, are weak. That's what it means. So when the correlation is negative, it is not that transaction volume increase. If transaction volume increase, and then let's say that revenue decreases, then you have to stop. If transaction volume is going up and the revenue is going down, then you have to tell management that they have to stop. Or which channel is causing us to lose more money? Let's pay attention to it, and then let's see how we can brand it for and then go with business. So that's the meaning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.